Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this Thursday. My name is Jim Bachman with the Maryland Distillers Guild. I'm Pearce at Tenth Ward Distilling Company in Frederick. I'm going to hand the presentation portion of this over to Monica in just a moment. She's going to talk to you all about the wonderful spirits and the story of Tenth Ward. In the meantime, I just want to thank everybody for your ongoing support of Maryland's distilling industry during this chaotic and hectic time. We really appreciate the outpouring of support that people are showing to distilleries throughout the state. We appreciate all the interest that people have in the efforts of our distillers to help hand sanitizer out to people who need it. And if you have any questions about that or are curious about the resources that we have available, visit us at marylandspirits.org. In the meantime, I want to let everyone know that if you didn't already know that your neighborhood distillery was open, they are able to sell you bottles to go, and in some cases cocktails to go. And some distilleries are offering delivery to your home while you're not allowed to congregate in their tasting room and enjoy samples and cocktails there. So we'll let Monica talk about what they're doing at 10th Ward and how they're handling this odd situation. But we'll also let her talk to us about how to properly taste whiskey and how to enjoy some great spirits that they make. So I'm going to be quiet and introduce you to Monica Pearce of 10th Ward.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica. I'm the founder of 10th Ward Distilling Company. They also like to call me the boss lady, so that's my unofficial title. I'll give a little bit of a background on 10th Ward, what we've been doing amidst the crisis. We'll do some fun tastings. So to start, our location is in what used to be considered the 10th Ward of Frederick. Frederick used to be districted into wards during the pre-Prohibition era. So we are in what's considered the 10th Ward. Our logo was actually developed based off of that map of the original wards. So they were all numbered by Roman numerals. Ours, obviously, the Roman numeral for 10, which looks like the big X. And then a graphic designer actually hand scribed and copied the original font from the map to draw out the text of both the X, which was the Roman numeral for 10, and the lettering for our logo. So we've continued to kind of tie our brand all around into the region that we're in. I started the business over almost 4 years ago now with everything that I had in my pocket. I had one of those moments where I was ready to quit my job, emptied my bank account and said, screw it, I want to open a distillery. And since then, I guess we started off with just my family and friends in the tasting room. We're now at a staff membership of 12 employees. We've expanded into a second location. We've renovated a historic building, opened a cocktail bar, and gone through a ton of really fun changes. So I'm proud to have been a part of it and to have met a lot of really awesome, cool people and made some fun spirits along the way. Our slogan is Word Off Ordinary. So we like to specialize in unconventional spirits, either the classic spirit with a twist on it or something that you've probably never had before. That's what I like to tell our guests and our customers when they come in here. You're going to taste something that you've never had before. That's where we also see a lot of success in sales as well, because then those customers want to come home with a unique spirit. We also had a very exciting turning point in the business when the law changed that would allow us to finally serve cocktails in distilleries. On-site consumption was something that eventually passed for the breweries, and then the distilleries followed suit after a lot of lobbying. So I'm actually in our both cocktail lab and barrel storage location today. We opened last July, what we call the cocktail lab, and that's where we have our mixology program. Customers can come in, they can taste and sample the spirits. They can have it in a mixed drink. You can come in and do a tour. We also host private events upstairs. So we've got a lot of really fun pieces of growth that have happened to the business since we started in our very small tasting room down on Church Street. I picked a variety of spirits today that you might not always see on the shelf for us to taste. Things are getting a little bit warmer outside and it's springy, even though you are sadly, unfortunately, probably tied to your living rooms right now. So I chose our smoked corn whiskey, our springtime liqueur, and something called Pawpaw Marl, which I'll explain what that is once we get to it. Things that we've been doing lately to sort of keep a little bit of money going are the offsite sales. People can call in and purchase our bottles to go. 2 of these spirits are for sale right now, as well as any other of the spirits listed on our website right now. If you click on our homepage, there's a button that takes you directly to what is available for to-go sales. We're doing cocktails to go, which is something really fun that we've never experienced. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we're offering there later on, as well as cocktail kits. So we've started to get creative. We're also being a little bit scrappy, as I've said before. I actually have the heat off in the building right now because it's so beautiful. So we're saving on utilities, lots of fun little cost saving things that we've been thinking as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start by leading you through first just how to nose and taste a spirit, because many people sometimes start to get intimidated when it comes to the tasting portion. I remember the very first time I went to a winery and I sat there and I was like, I don't know what to do. And the guy actually said some very important thoughts, important words to me that I think about all the time. And he said, it doesn't really matter if you know anything about tannins or legs, it just matters what you like. And I took that with me, and I think about that all the time when I'm tasting things. But there are also ways to start to pull out those flavor profiles that you realize that you enjoy, so you can look for that at the shop next time you're picking up to drink. So what Jim is going to share for you here is something called the Spirit Flavor Wheel. This was actually developed by Modern Bar Cart. They produce local mixers. They produce bitters, and we actually carry their bitters as well. I'm going to start, and if anybody has time, pull out your favorite spirit, pour it in a glass, and I'll walk through with you how to nose and taste that spirit. I'm actually going to start with our smoked corn whiskey. Now, what you want to do before you taste is something called nosing. Obviously, that means smelling. Typically, you want to start about 4 inches from the spirit, so you're not trying to burn any nose hairs off. I like to tell our guests when they come in for tours that the average person typically can't pull out very specific flavor profiles from just nosing something. Your palate and your senses just aren't that refined when it comes to scent. So all of those little flavors and words on the outside of the wheel that are very specific, you likely won't get in the very beginning part when you're nosing something. So I like to direct people to the middle of the wheel to start, because these are the most obvious types of flavor profiles that you can pull out, even when you're tasting something, if you're a beginner. Our corn whiskey, and this is actually a really fun story, is actually smoked by our farmer. This is one of those spirits where we... a lot of people try to ask me how we develop our recipes, and this was one of those drunk conversations at a bar where I was sitting with my friend Harry Harn, the head brewer over at Milk House Brewery, and I said, I want to make the best corn whiskey out there. And he said, well, you should smoke the corn whiskey. And I thought about it, and I was like, holy crap, that's an amazing idea. I called our farmer. He happened to have a proprietary ham smoking recipe. He's famous for his smoked hams. He tested that out on the corn, and it's amazing. So that's just a little bit of a background about our corn whiskey. We've been making this particular style ever since. So when I smell our corn whiskey, because of that, I actually get a lot of wood from it, a little bit of cereal from the grain. The spirit has 80% smoked corn, 20% malted barley in it. So once you're done nosing your spirit, you're going to want to start tasting it. I always recommend you taste your spirit twice. I don't think that you should judge a spirit on the initial first taste, and that's because alcohol, no matter how smooth or wonderful it tastes, is always going to shock your palate the first time you taste it. So go ahead and take a sip and either breathe in or out of your mouth. Be careful not to breathe the whiskey in, just breathe air in. I've seen a lot of people get a little nervous at that point. And then on your second sip, you'll want to roll it around on your tongue a little bit. Start to really get the flavors on your palate. Now with this corn whiskey, we can start to get a little bit further into the wheel. So if you remember, I originally smelled wood and cereal with this. I can start to get a little bit more specific now. So you can get a little bit of the breadiness from the barley that's in the recipe. Definitely some smoke, which is that bottom portion of the wood. You keep going on the finish of this spirit. I really get a lot of campfire. Something that's really fun about our corn whiskey that a lot of people associate this with is actually tequila, more specifically mezcal. Mezcal is a type of agave spirit that is more smoky tasting and made in a different region than Jalisco, where tequila is actually made. And because of that, we really like to mix our corn whiskey and treat it like a tequila when we mix it. So Jim, you can probably take the wheel down now, but if anybody has any more questions about the wheel, please let us know. We can zoom back into this as we get into other things. And I also have it in the background here. I'm not sure how well you can read it.
And just to reiterate, that wheel that we were using is from our friends at Modern Bar Cart. We appreciate that resource. We were able to share that. And I think you might have a plant in the audience. I don't want to dime out your guy, but Mark would like to know, is your corn whiskey barrel aged?
Is the corn whiskey barrel aged? That's a really good question. And it's funny because when I was talking to Harry Harn about this, I even said, I want this corn whiskey to be so good that nobody thinks it's moonshine. Nobody's comparing it to what you're getting in a jar that tastes like fuel. So this is what we call a white whiskey. It is unaged. You can call it new make. You can call it a clear whiskey. There are a few different words for it. I hear moonshine a lot when somebody sees a clear whiskey. And that's a pet peeve of mine, because I consider moonshine to be what your redneck uncle is making in his backyard in West Virginia. Moonshining is what used to be considered illegal, and you were doing it under the moonlight at night when nobody could catch you, and usually out by a creek where you could chill down your equipment as it was distilling. So the reason, and here's a picture, or here's the bottle here. The reason that it's clear is because we bottle it after we proof it right out of the still. This is an unaged whiskey. It doesn't touch any oak. If you've ever had vodka, gin, any sort of a white rum, the exact same thing. And that's what I say to people who turn their nose up at a white whiskey. If you also enjoy gin or vodka, it's the same type of spirit. The reason that you see people hesitating when it comes to white whiskeys is because a lot of times distilleries will rely on the barrel aging process to make a whiskey good. The charcoal in a barrel will actually filter out a lot of impurities, and it will start to make a whiskey taste maybe a little bit smoother, a little more refined. And the way that we respond to that is we actually distill our white whiskey in a different way than you would distill a barrel aged whiskey. We're more conservative with our cuts. The cuts are the points in time during distillation where you remove the heads and the tails, the isopropyls, the acetone, the stuff that everybody's making hand sanitizer with right now. And we're much more conservative with that. So Mark makes sure to leave in as much hearts as possible and not have any wavering point where a barrel aged whiskey, for flavor, sometimes you might keep in a little bit more heads or tails and let the charcoal in the barrel do its work there. So we're very proud of this whiskey. I have this really fun styrofoam cup here to show you guys what you can get with the whiskey here at 10th Ward right now. We have a smoky jalapeno margarita on draft that you can get in this size. You can also get it in formats of 2 cocktails or 4 cocktails to go. This is one of our most popular cocktails. We also recommend mixing it with an old fashioned. I just like to drink it with a little soda water and lime if I'm not drinking it straight. This is one of my very first spirits that we ever made, so I consider this my baby. It will eventually be considered what we call a smoked bourbon. Bourbon is technically 51% corn, aged at least 51% corn or more, aged in an unused American white oak barrel. So we've released our bourbon once before. Eventually we'll release it so that it is available to the public on a regular basis. So that's spirit number one.
You had two names for that were not white whiskey. One was New Cut, is that what it was?
New Make.
New Make, and what was the other one?
Probably clear whiskey or moonshine.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I've heard silver whiskey before. Probably ways for people to make it sound prettier. So the next guy that we're gonna move on to here. Oh, something I wanted to show everybody while we're drinking whiskey. There are two different glasses that I drink whiskey out of. Something called a Glencairn glass. This is a patented style of glass that is made only in Scotland. It's famous because a bunch of lab and whiskey scientists got together and developed the shape of a glass that is supposed to be ideal for nosing and tasting. The bulbous shape here is supposed to perfectly capture the whiskey once you swirl it around to smell and to taste. I personally prefer a rocks glass. There are critics to both. The reason I like the rocks glass is because I like the feel of it. I feel more comfortable drinking out of it. There's more room for me to smell the spirit. I also used to tell our employees when we carried these regularly that they would get in big trouble if they broke them because they're very expensive. And then I broke 5 in a week. So I consider the rocks glass also to be a little more Monica proof. But anyway, we no longer carry these, but we do have these available to go. And it's been really fun to see people pick up a rocks glass and pour their drink to go in the rocks glass and then share it on Instagram. That's been a great way to help us get the word out about what we're selling right now. Anyway, side note, now we're gonna move on to the springtime liqueur. This guy is one of our seasonal spirits. It has an apple brandy base. That means that a brandy is distilled from fruit. So you could have a grape-based brandy, which is typically a distilled wine. An apple brandy is going to be a fermented and distilled cider. You can go on and on with any type of fruit, peach, pear, etc. I would say grape is probably the most popular. That's where you get your like cognacs and any sort of brandy you might see wineries selling based on their spent grape left over from production. And then apple brandy is probably one of the most second known types of brandy. So that's the base of our liqueurs. We then infuse these guys with different botanicals based on what is seasonal at the time. These were originally inspired by a mixologist by the name of Matt DiStefano, who was a bartender here in Frederick, Maryland. When we originally opened, we started with 3 different whiskeys, and I started to notice that I also had a lot of wine drinkers that were coming through our shop. They preferred something lower ABV, a little more accessible, a little sweeter. We still weren't allowed to serve cocktails yet, and so straight spirits for them were a little harsh on the palate, and I decided to start to come up with something that could be more accessible to the non-whiskey drinker, I guess. So we've infused this liqueur, the springtime liqueur, which we do have available right now, with something called sweet woodruff. That's an herb and a flower that only becomes ripe actually during this period of time right now. Cardamom, vanilla, allspice, Granny Smith apple peel, chamomile. I'm sure my employees can tell me that I'm forgetting something, but there are a couple other, we sweeten it with local honey as well. And that's traditional to a liqueur. So if you think back to how chartreuse was made, those are types of spirits that were made to be medicinal. Some of those had hundreds of botanicals in them. We always try to keep ours to around 10. So on the nose of this, I get the woodruff especially. It's a very sweet floral smell, a little bit of honey, and a little bit of the cardamom, a little bit of those baking spice notes. And when I sip on it, I get these just like a complex flavor bomb. And that's what I love about our liqueurs. They have so much going on, but they're so well balanced. And then it continues to change your palate as it finishes. Definitely some fruit. I get tartness from the apple peel. We considered citrus for this spirit, but we decided to go with Granny Smith apple peel instead of lemon because it was a little bit softer. And just the taste of spring all around. I like to mix this with champagne. All of our seasonal liqueurs go really well and bubbly. It's sort of our take on the Cure Royale, which we'll call Springtime Royale instead. You just put a little bit of splash in your champagne. If you want something less alcoholic or less strong, you could use ginger beer instead. Mules are very popular. This is a nice way to just add a little bit of extra depth of flavor to your mule. But honestly, over ice is fine. It's almost like you're drinking a cocktail right in a glass.
And while Monica enjoys that sip, we have another question from a wonderful viewer. Does 10th Ward use any developed flavors or colors, or are all of your flavors naturally infused with actual ingredients?
We naturally infuse everything. That's an awesome question. Thanks for asking. It's important to us that we only use natural ingredients, that the color comes from the ingredients. And we actually think about that. We think about not just the flavor profile, but how it can appear like spring. It's kind of a nice light yellow, green color. It might make you think of fresh budding grass, recently budding flowers. Because of that, though, we struggle sometimes with seeing a little bit of sediment in the bottle. So we let our customers know that 100% natural ingredients are infused into this spirit, and that's why you're going to enjoy it. Thank you for asking. So the next guy I'm going to move on to here is what we call our Papa Marl. Now this spirit, for some that are viewing, you may have never heard of Papa Marl before, and that's because we've never marketed this. It's not normally for sale to the public. This is a spirit that was one of our limited releases back in October for our club. We have a bottle club. They have a bunch of really fun perks. It's actually free to join, but we release bottles on a quarterly basis, and they are exclusive only to our club members. We also leave a drink and a tasting option on our menu in the cocktail lab here that is also available only to club members. So it's kind of a fun thing to get customers sort of bought into the idea. We do specialty events for our members. They get discounts on merchandise, other fun perks, discounts on flights and that type of stuff. So we wanted to do something local, but also different. Mark, our head distiller, had the idea to distill the Papa Marl. For those that are native Marylanders, the super hardcore Marylanders, you may have heard of something called the pawpaw fruit. Pawpaws are a fruit that's native to the Bay region that is very tropical tasting. It almost tastes like a mango and a papaya mixed together. They're hard to find. They're only ripe during certain times of the year. So we decided to take that native fruit and then also a spirit that we had never released before. Now, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Amaros. I can tell you the very first time I had an Amaro was probably Campari when I was 19. I was bartending at a college bar where everybody drank Bud Lights and Jaeger bombs. So the first time I had an Amaro, which is a very bitter style of spirit, I thought it tasted like dirt, and I refused to ever drink it again. And I never understood why anybody would want to order Campari. But 15 years later, the more I drink Amaros, the more I learned to love them. They are an Italian style spirit that are very bitter in nature. They use bittering agents or bittering types of herbs like wormwood or I can't think off of the top of my head other types of bittering agents all of a sudden. What do we use in this guy? We've got crab apples in this guy, which isn't bitter. I just realized on our label, we don't even write what we have in here. Anyway, the pawpaw Amaro, we do infuse with pawpaws, crab apples, hawthorn berries, prickly pear fruit, and gentian, that's it. Gentian is in the pawpaw Amaro, and that's what's going to create that bitter taste. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some. Italians are known for drinking Amaros after dinner as an aperitif. It's supposed to be a palate cleanser. It's supposed to be something you sip on at the end of your meal. I've been to traditional Italian dinners where they just put a giant gallon jug in the middle of the table of Amaro and limoncello, and then you pour one or both to sip on after your meal. Now this one's really fun. This one's beautiful in orange color. It also has something called annatto in it, which is a red style seed that will turn things red. And then after it sat with all the other botanicals, it became orange. On the nose, I already get that super bitter note, which is really wonderful. And then on the taste, you get that pop of all those tropical flavors. They come from especially the pawpaw, but I'll get a little bit of the tartness from the crab apple. I think that was a really fun addition that Mark thought about. And then on the finish, your palate just sits wonderfully with that bitter note. Now we were mixing this with a traditional sort of Aperol spritz cocktail. So if you've ever heard of any other type of Amaro, you've probably seen either Aperol or Campari. Also very similar to this color. I believe they used to use something called cochineal to color their Amaros, which is a type of beetle shell. We were considering doing that for a while with one of our Amaros here at the bar, but then it was no longer considered vegan friendly. It kind of depends on your preference, but most people might not know that originally people were putting bug skin in their Amaros. So you can treat this, like I said, like an Aperol spritz. So we were doing, instead of soda or tonic water, I believe we were doing the pawpaw Amaro and just a little ginger beer and an orange garnish. Again, also goes well with champagne. I always love brightening champagne with any type of liqueurs. And this one was just super fun for us to release. It's got a cute little parrot on the label. Again, joining the club is fun to be a part of because then you get labels and bottles of things that nobody else has access to, and it's never going to come back again. So it makes for a really awesome collector's item. Any questions so far about the spirits?
Nothing else popping up right now. I think it's interesting that there was a non-vegan friendly addition to such a popular liqueur.
Yeah.
I come from the brewing world, and in both brewing and in winemaking, there are finings that are used, and sometimes those finings come from parts of animals that you may not be familiar with. So,
yes, I'm familiar with at least the beer that Old Mother is famous for.
Well, and there's also isinglass, which is used to clear out any solids that might be floating in beer, and that actually comes from the swim bladder of fish.
Wow.
So there are now vegan-friendly versions of products that you can use to clear your beer out without filtration. But it's interesting that, you know, these makers, these folks who have been bringing these great beers, wine, and spirits to people for centuries have been finding ways through nature to help their process. I think it's very cool.
I've always just liked to think about what made them want to try specifically, what was it, the fish bladder?
Yeah, like how did they know that was going to work, right?
Yeah, or let's grind up this beetle and see if it tastes really good in this liquor that we're making right now. I don't know.
And it's a really cool color.
Yeah, those crack me up.
Cesar Diaz says that the Papa Amaro is also really good with your Jennifer.
Interesting. That's a good way to mix it.
And Mark would like to know if you could hint at any upcoming club releases for folks that might be watching.
Oh, good question. So the April release, we release these bottles quarterly on a fiscal year or on an annual basis, is what we're calling the Conservation Cordial. This was also one of Mark's really cute ideas where we are using very deliciously edible invasive species throughout the state and the Bay region in an infusion for the spirit. So we've got honeysuckle, I believe, hawthorn berries, and mimosa flowers from the mimosa tree that will be infused into a cordial or a liqueur style of spirit, and that will be slightly sweetened with honey. So Mark's slogan has been devour the interlopers and save the bay. Yeah, so that's a cute one. So that's a lot of fun. The Pawpaw Amaro was a hit. It was very interesting to introduce an Amaro to first-time Amaro drinkers. And Amaros are starting to become very popular, but I remember kind of like explaining it as it would almost be like convincing your grandfather in the 50s when he was only drinking Budweiser to try a really hazy, hoppy IPA for the first time. So getting our club members on board with trying things they've never had before is challenging, but also really fun, because then they come in and they're like, wait, how can I mix with this? How should I drink it? And then they mix it at home, and then they get creative and come up with fun ideas like what Cesar said. So thanks for the questions, guys.
How does somebody become a member of your club, and what recommendations do you have? Do you have full availability for people to join, or are you limited? What does that look like?
Currently now, no limits until we get to the point where we probably can't produce enough to service club members. We have about 360 members right now. If you go to our website, there's actually a header right on our website. Jim, you might be able to share the link at some point, dedicated just to the club. When you sign up, it does ask for your credit card information. We will charge your card quarterly, but you do have the option to opt out. So you have up to a week before that release comes out to say, no, I would prefer to not be charged for this quarterly release this time. Highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
So if anybody out there is familiar with a wine bottle club or something like that, this is very similar. It sounds like the punctuated releases throughout the year, plus you have the ability to say, hey, skip me on this one. But that's great. And I did share the link to that. There's also the link to Tenth Ward's site up at the very top of this chain of conversation. All of the spirits that Monica talked about, except for the wonderful Papa Amaro, are listed on that site. And I have included the tasting notes in the comments if anybody needs to go back and refresh their palate with what we were talking about. What else do you have for us? What else? How can people come and enjoy Tenth Ward spirits while the world seems to be in chaos?
Yeah, really good question. Keep following us. What I tell people first is everybody's experiencing hard times right now. So the best way to support us, especially if cash is tight, is to share our posts, follow our posts, sign up for the newsletter, which you can also do on our website. Just getting the word out that we're still open helps a ton. If you do go to the homepage of our website and click on the curbside link, you'll see a list of all the spirits that we have to go, both in, actually I have a half size bottle here. This is the 375 milliliter bottle. We have these available with every spirit, as well as the larger size that's for sale right now. We're doing our cocktails on draft to go. So we're fortunate that we do have tap lines set up, which means our cocktails are batched on a very large scale, put into kegs, and then just poured on draft. So our staff aren't mixing anything. They're being very safe. They're using gloves. It comes straight out of the tap line into a to-go cup. That includes the smoky jalapeno margarita with the corn whiskey that we talked about, the old fashioned with our caraway rye, and our very popular Corpse Survivor that has our Jennifer style gin, absinthe, and a chai vanilla simple syrup in it. Oh, and a little bit of lemon juice as well. So that's all available to go. Pricing and quantity options are on the website. And the last thing that we're doing are mule kits. So you can get 3 different options of a mule. So that'll include a small bottle of a spirit, which can make up to 8 drinks, a container of ginger beer, which can also make up to 8 drinks, a lime, and a rocks glass. So that's what we've got going on.
That's really great.
Yeah.
And also, I noticed when I was looking at your website earlier that you do have a link right there to purchase gift cards. One beautiful thing about the distilling industry is that the product that they have will live on the shelf for a little while. So if you can't make it out right now, think about supporting them with a gift card and using that gift card to get a bottle of these great spirits at some point in the future. But that cash flow is going to help these businesses continue to innovate and bring out really great things and pay the wonderful staff that they have um, making all of these great spirits in Maryland. Um, so it's been all over the news. It's been covered everywhere. The questions keep pouring into us at the Maryland Distillers Guild about distilleries and hand sanitizer. Can you talk just a little bit about what is going on in the world with hand sanitizer and how a distillery plays into that?
Sure. It's so funny because after we got, like, I'm sure we've had over 100 inquiries by now. I said to the team, I was like, wasn't there a day in our time period before hand sanitizer even existed that everybody was still just living life and they were fine? But I understand it's very important, especially for people out there like first responders that don't have access to potentially running water and soap on hand all the time. We were making hand sanitizer at one point early on when we did make it with whatever materials we had on hand. We probably produced maybe almost 200 small little to-go bottles. And then at that point, it got to the point where we were having requests for 50 gallons at a time. We looked into the numbers, and for us, not just changing our production model to make hand sanitizer would have been really challenging, but also the upfront cost of getting the materials to produce it just would have been too much while we're also trying to keep the lights on. So what we decided to do instead was offer high ABV alcohol to pharmacies who do have the materials to produce their own hand sanitizer. The first batch that we donated went to White Cells Pharmacy here on Market Street in Frederick. It's really cool. They have this little like pharmacy printed label that has our name on it. It says thanks to 10th Ward on it.
If you give me just a minute, I'm going to pull that up. I have a link to that.
Oh, you do? Yay. I only sent a picture to Abby, so I don't know where else it might be. Maybe it's on social media or something. And then
we're good like that. We share internally.
Yay, good. And then the other thing we're offering, and that's to pharmacies at request. We've also to grocery stores that have pharmacies in them. They have the capabilities to do that as well. And then we're doing surface cleaner. We'll be able to offer very large discounts to nonprofits and those that need surface cleaners, especially medical facilities, et cetera. And then for purchase for other sorts of businesses that are considered essential that do need to stay open right now. So look out for that information probably, later this week or tomorrow.
Yeah, it's amazing how much interest there is obviously in trying to procure hand sanitizer. Our Chief Strategy Officer, Kelly Dudek, has been working tirelessly along with Abby to field all of the inquiries that are coming in from first responder groups, nonprofits, just about anybody you can imagine who needs a fast, quick way to handle maintaining a sanitary environment. When they're dealing with
really
other people.
Cool. Yeah, it's really cool to see all of a sudden just like this drastic change in the way things work all of a sudden. I mean, even getting the TTB, that's our federal regulatory arm for distilleries, breweries, alcohol manufacturers. That probably would have taken us 5 years of lobbying to quickly change regulations and their processes to make distilleries be able to produce hand sanitizer within 24 hours and sell it or donate it to the public. Oh yeah, there's the picture of the White Cell bottle. It's insane. It's so cool. It's so cool how quickly we're able to respond when our community needs us. And it's been neat to see and to be a part of it.
We, like I said, do have some resources out there for first responders to submit their needs to the Guild. And through that, we are trying to get members who are still producing hand sanitizer in touch with you. If you're listening to this and you're looking for it, we have such a small available volume of hand sanitizer out there that we're not going to be able to fulfill everybody's need right now. So those needs are being prioritized by the folks who are manufacturing this. But we really do appreciate that people are reaching out to distilleries and that distilleries are, answering the call when it's necessary. And I appreciate that you guys were able to offer that to members of our community. I live just a couple of blocks away from Monica's distillery, so it's heartwarming to see everybody come out at a time of need and help with what's going on in the community. And all we ask is that everybody can continue to support these great establishments. Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Thanks to everybody who have had very sweet and encouraging words and have called to support us and come in to purchase. It means a lot. We'll just keep chugging along until everything goes back to normal.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, visit 10th Ward's website at 10thwarddistilling.com. All of the updates are there about what they're doing for off-premise sale, both of spirits and delicious cocktails. And you can also visit marylandspirits.org for updates about the Maryland Distillers Guild. We are working to get another one of these cool virtual tastings scheduled for next week. So keep an eye out. We had a great time having you. And if you have any more questions, please let us know.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.